Bonjour, mes amis. Hola, amigos. And hello, everyone. This is Wheelhouse Traditions, bringing a little feature to you and all the things that I do with regard to spinning fiber arts and traditions. Today, I want to highlight the Ashford Traditional wheel. Now, this one's even a more modern model. I do have others that are more vintage, coming from the 60s and nearly vintage in the 70s, which, that's approaching fast to reach the 50-year mark. So, I wanted to go over a couple things when you are looking at that second hand wheel. Now, this one being a younger model, you would expect fewer issues, but sometimes people do all kinds of interesting things. Now, with this particular wheel, it really did not have any severe water damage, but there were some marks down on the treadle. Now, you don't see those water marks anymore because I have now gone in and I have treated this with restoration cream. I prefer using Skidmore's restoration cream, and you really cannot see, unless you really look closely and personal, any more watermarks on this. So she's actually looking to be quite a beauty, and it looked like perhaps maybe in her travels something was spilled on it, which is also apparent just due to being out in the elements, maybe not properly being stored or whatever. The hub here had separated. Now, unfortunately, the previous owner, when they went to thinking they're going to repair this hub, they put just glue on the outside of the hub. But I went ahead and I dismantled everything, cleared out the old glue, re-glued it. And there is a way to glue this properly. If you need that instruction on that, holler. And I can show you and share some pictures on it. You want to make sure you don't get any glue into the area on the spokes, because you need the spokes to be able to expand when the humidity changes and what have you. So you don't want that to end up causing stress in this whole assembly and causing your wood to split or something else. So some caution does need to take place there, because some people are super glue happy and you really just can't overdo it once you get all that opened up. But there's a pin here. The pin was clean. The crank and the axle was clean on this, so there wasn't a whole lot of rust to see. But you could always inspect on rust. There was some rust over here. One-handed cameraman move here. But it cleaned out really well once I started oiling everything to work. And don't do that with your flyer. But when you come in, you see a little rust, surface rust on there. If it's just surface rust, it's not going to be a huge deal. There's still some surface rust spotting on here. I can clear the rust off so it just doesn't continue working into there. Another thing to check for, where oftentimes rust will be seen, and then I'll tell you whether it's properly stored or not, is down in here in the hinges. These hinges are super clean. But look what we find here. There's a crack in the base of the mother of all, or MOA here. So what had been done here is placed a couple of screws in here to piece these two pieces together. Now, personally, I would not have done them with screws. I would have drilled holes to join the two pieces together, and then I would have placed toothpicks or dowels in that area with glue to then adhere them, and properly would have put maybe like thinner toothpicks here on this side so it wouldn't cause any additional strain. The way this crack can happen is if someone comes in and over tightens these right here, that'll cause, obviously, crack and strains throughout this, and that's what causes a crack on here, onto here. And so this crack then can throw things off as well. Now, this one didn't come with an area for the tension knob to rest on, and so you'll get a little hole in there. Not a big deal, but I usually always like to put an upholstery tack in here. I've seen this on other wheels, and so it just gives it a sturdier place for your tension to remain pretty steady, so it's not wearing at the wood base right here. But as you can see, these are all things you can look for. These washers here, everything looks clean. So this was not really put in major poor storage. It just had a little bit of moisture exposure, and you know, the glue in the hub here will age after some time, especially if it's been in heat, especially down here in the Gulf Coast on occasion. So those are all things one can look for and to see on whether or not you want to work with this wheel as a second hand. Sometimes the price, what the person is asking for a wheel like this, will decide on whether or not you're going to purchase it. This being a newer wheel, with their value and the fact that you can easily find parts to replace on it, you know, you could go in our area $150, other areas it might be cheaper. So again, you have to kind of test the market of where you're located and on whether or not you have to deal with this. Now, this wheel was a little bit dry, so let me move this flyer out of the way now. This was a little bit dry, so definitely treating the wood makes a difference and can improve upon things. I'll move my drive band now too. But even with all that being said, sometimes in their travels, the wheel may have been dropped, and sometimes either the wood becomes warped from exposure or the crank in the axle can become warped. So what we're looking at here, and this is what people say, check to make sure it doesn't have a wobble. So you see from above, the wobble isn't bad, but you can see a wobble in the wheel. Now, I will say, after treating this wheel with oil and everything, the wobble was reduced, as well as getting this section tightened up. I tightened up all the other joints. It improved the wobble on this wheel tremendously. Sometimes that's all you need. The care of the wobble, the concern over the wobble, is if it throws off the drive band. This wobble was minor, won't throw off the drive band. But I'm going to go ahead and test and get some repair parts. I'm trying to get a crank from Susan's Fiber Shop so that it can, I'll test it out and see if I can reduce a wobble. I have another one I restored that still has a mild wobble. It spins just fine with that wobble. Sometimes that wobble just really bothers some people, and that's okay. That's your personal preference. But the wobble depends on whether or not it's going to keep a drive band on or throw a drive band off. So in that case, you may want to test something if you can. The risk here is if you're new to spinning and you don't know and you can't make the distinction on whether or not you're going to get it to spin, the risk becomes high. And if you don't know, that's why some people discourage getting that secondhand wheel. If you have somebody you trust that can work in that area with restoration and knowledge of these pieces, or at least knowledge of where to get replacement parts, and if the price is right for your budget and really low, but do know you may have to put in some additional expenses in to get the wheel going where you'd like it. So it's all based on preference, but this wobble isn't bad. In fact, my other one who spins just fine wobbles even more, I've noticed. So but that one had severe water damage to it. The fact that it wobbles some is no surprise. I don't believe it was ever dropped, but that poor girl has just been through a heck of a lot, and her wobble's even more significant than this one. So now another thing that happened somewhere along the travel, the tension knob was disappearing. So again, know the model of wheel, study what should be there before you go to purchase one, and see what's included. So with this one, the orifice hook was missing, but it's no big deal for an Ashford or even any wheel. You can purchase orifice hooks online or have one constructed. I got this one from the maintenance kit, and it works just fine, right? That's perfectly fine for this model. And you could choose one that's a bit fancier. There's all kinds of options out there. Not a big deal because it comes with a maintenance kit. The maintenance kits you can purchase from places like Susan's Fiber Shop. Comes with a drive band, comes with a conrod, either a leather or a poly one that connects the footman back here to your treadle. And so there's all kinds of basic maintenance items that come in this kit that'll help you work through it. But this one was missing a little bit more. It was missing a tension knob, and this tension knob is right here. This hole is where you typically have a knob that'll allow you to tighten up for the brake that goes around the bobbin here that allows to slow your bobbin down so the uptick can happen while you're spinning. And so at first, the guess was, and I kept getting a couple of them, the old style tension hooks, tension knobs, but these are way too not narrow for this particular hole. What's funny with this wheel, and this is some of the things you'll deal with, and as a new spinner, or if you're not into restoration, this may not be something you want to deal with if these parts are missing. And so the price point the person's asking for, and then your resources or desire to do this kind of work may not be there. So you have to do a personal judgment. No one should tell you, no, you can't get it because it requires all these things. Well, you may not mind doing these things, okay? But other people, they're like, nope, I definitely don't want to mess up. I want something ready to spin out of the box. No trouble, no problems at all. And if there's a problem, I can return it and get a replacement, right? So it just depends on everyone's patience and desire. So now we got a tension knob that has a thicker base than the other one, right? So the old style is thin like this. The new one is a much thicker base, right? What's crazy though, still, when I put this tension knob in, it goes all the way and it's still a little loose. So I don't know if someone put something else as a replacement in here before it opened up this hole even more than the standard that's for Ashford. So odd things can happen. Like there was glue on the outside of the hub here touching on the spokes. Okay, people will do odd things, and so you have to be able to be willing to look at these things and decide whether it's worth your trouble or not. This is going to be a student wheel for my own, and it was in good shape, you know, in spite of all these little things. And these are not a big thing for me because I've got extra Ashford parts on hand. But we were kind of laughing, Susan and I, because this has become a ridiculous challenge. Now, this isn't, oh, this is done for, whatever. All I could do is I could go ahead, I could either put some waxed fiber in here as a shim, or I can hemp it. I can put some thin line in here that's coated with beeswax, so it's going to be a little tacky. Put it in here, and then it's going to have the proper grip, and I'll still be able to turn it around to do the tension. Now, this one is lacquered. I don't want to lacquer. I want to get this cherry finish like on the original, so I'm going to just sand off the lacquer just a touch, just a little bit, and then I'm going to treat this with boiled linseed oil so it can darken up and match the rest of the wheel, and then I'll go ahead and I'll put the restoration cream on it. So again, this is great for people who like to tinker and like to do things like this, but folks who don't, you know, you may want to turn a wheel like this away. And even though it looks really, really good, it's missing some basic things. And I think that was the frustration of the previous owner. They overpaid for this wheel as a secondhand wheel. And they were expecting to get the same price for it. It didn't have all the bells and whistles it should have had as a secondhand wheel. And some things that happened on her journey that probably should not have happened. This isn't the worst I've had, though. So it's all in perspective and relatively speaking. So missing parts like this, just know the wheel, the secondhand wheel that you're looking at, what it's missing and what it may entail. If you're not sure, then reach out to others who may know, or call a local spinner by. But do be careful, because some of these other spinners are like, never do a restoration wheel. But some people are willing to do all that. But this is what I've had to do with this one. Otherwise, it's working great. It's spinning great. The flyer is solid. There's no stress marks. There's no cracks on the flyer, even though I just dropped it earlier. Don't do that. Blame it my trying to be a one-handed cameraman. But as long as everything is good. Now, it only came with one bobbin. It only came with one bobbin. So you can't, no one can expect you to pay $400 for even a modern wheel that at best may be, may have been built in the 80s. You can't expect us to pay $400. I mean, yes, it has a solid flyer, but it's missing some parts. It had a wobble. It had separation at the hub. And it comes with only one bobbin. Where are the other bobbins that typically you'll get with a brand new wheel? You're not going to do that. It didn't even come with the Lazy Kate. Yes, one can be purchased aftermarket. But is this wheel $400 worth purchase? No, because it has some minor repairs and adjustments that's needed on it. And it has only one bobbin. It has only, it had missing things. So you have to take all those things into consideration. Now, it may be different when it's your first time wheel, and that's the best price you can find. You're willing to do the work. It may have more value for you in those circumstances. But if you already have a wheel, you're going to use this one to teach others, whatever, in my case, it has less value. And I'm unwilling to pay, almost brand new wheel prices for something that needs some, love and tenderness to get back to working. So it's all relative and all based what you want. But overall, she's pretty. Once you get the wood out of that dry stage, they get to the point where they have their glow up, and their glow up, it just makes you smile, and it's one of the most rewarding things you'll have going on. So now in my next step, I'll be able to get, the drive band, the brake band, everything on, and finally give her a spin and see how that wobble affects the spin. But this wobble is so minor. Like I said, I have another one that has a little bit more of a wobble, and it spins just fine. In fact, I was just spinning on it this past weekend. So that all works out. I'm going to have this mismatched in color. That's okay. I know how to resolve that, but other people may not want to work that. Anyway, Ashford Traditional. This one is one of the more modern ones at the oldest, possibly made in the 80s as the oldest. Not that much. I'll do another video once I get her spinning again, just to let you guys know, yep, she works. But kind of give you an idea what to look for, because I find a lot is said online in the groups, but not enough explicit instruction is ever given and provided. And luckily I had good friends to help teach me about these wheels, and some things I was able to figure out just by doing. So anyhow, I hope you find this as a helpful video, and I'll do another one to take you on this journey of bringing this wheel back to a working wheel. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.